Hey there, and welcome back. In a world that is just constantly going, finding a moment of genuine calm can feel, well, almost impossible. Today, we're going to look at a practice that promises exactly that, but through a really interesting lens, Christian mindfulness. So, let's dive in and see what this is all about. So, let me ask you something. Do any of these words hit home? Anxious, distracted, fatigued. Maybe it's not a constant thing, but you know those quiet moments when all the noise finally fades away and you're left with that feeling of being pulled in a million directions at once, or just that low hum of exhaustion? If that sounds familiar, you are definitely not alone. These feelings are basically the soundtrack to modern life, aren't they? We're always connected, always on, and it can be completely draining. So it's no wonder that so many of us are on this search for some calm, for a little bit of clarity in the chaos. This quote really gets to the heart of it. It's the word quietly that stands out, right? This isn't something we usually shout from the rooftops. It's an internal battle, but it's one that so many people are fighting. So if this is the problem, what's the response? Well, for some, the answer is found in a practice called Christian mindfulness. It's an approach that's been specifically tailored to address these feelings of anxiety and distraction, but it does it from a foundation of faith. So, you might be wondering, what makes this different from any other kind of mindfulness? Well, the key is right here in the definition. This isn't about just emptying your mind. It's more about anchoring your awareness in God's presence. It's a Christ-centered way of being that weaves together scripture with insights from modern psychology. The whole idea is to find that sense of peace in your everyday life, not just when things get tough. Okay, and this is a really important distinction to make. Christian mindfulness is presented as a pastoral tool. Think of it as a resource for your spiritual well-being. What it is not is therapy. It's not a clinical treatment for a medical condition. The focus here is squarely on spiritual support. And what are the goals of using this tool? Honestly, they're beautifully simple. It's about helping weary people find real rest. It's about helping anxious people find a sense of peace. And for all of us who are just too busy, it's about helping us rediscover prayer. The idea is to gently train our attention so we can learn to shift our focus away from what's making us anxious and toward a source of genuine calm. Now, this all sounds great in theory, but what does it actually look like? If you were to walk into one of these taster sessions, what would you actually do? Let's break it down step by step. So it's not some mysterious ritual. It's actually a really clear 5-step process. First, there's an introduction, just to get everyone on the same page. Then, you learn a practical mindfulness tool, something simple you can actually use, like a breath prayer. After that, you get to practice it with a guided meditation. Then there's an optional time for some silent prayer, just to sit in that stillness. And it all wraps up with some group sharing, which is just a safe space to ask questions or talk about your experience. It's all designed to be really gentle and supportive. Okay, so we know what happens in a session, but who's it really for? And maybe just as important, who's the person leading the way? You might think it's just for, super devout churchgoers, but the audience is actually way broader than that. Of course, it's great for clergy and parishioners, but it's also for people who are maybe just on the fringes of the church, curious but not deeply involved. Really, it's for anyone at all who wants to nurture some inner peace. It's even being used in wider community well-being programs. The guide for these sessions is a qualified meditation teacher named Martin Zetter, and his background is pretty impressive. We're talking about a full decade of experience here, and what's really key is that he's taught in both secular and Christian environments. That's huge. It means he has this deep understanding of mindfulness from all sides, and he can bridge those two worlds in a really authentic way. And look at where he teaches, places like Douay Abbey and the famous St. Paul's Cathedral. When you're leading sessions at institutions like that, it really speaks to the credibility and the acceptance of this practice within the church itself. All right, so as we start to wrap things up here, let's just boil it all down. What's the bottom line? What is the ultimate promise of a practice like Christian mindfulness? It really comes back to these 3 simple but incredibly powerful ideas. It's not about achieving some kind of complex, mystical state. It's about meeting these deep, fundamental human needs. It's a way to find rest when the world is wearing you out. It's a path to find peace when anxiety is screaming. And it's an opportunity to find your way back to prayer when life just gets too loud. And that kind of leaves us with one last thought. Beyond any specific technique or session, the real invitation here is to just find a little pocket of stillness in your own day, however brief it might be. So we'll leave you with this question to chew on. Where can you find a moment of stillness today? Thanks for tuning in.